Pod racing is back. This intergalactic sport makes its return in Star Wars: The Bad Batch Season 2. George Lucas invented the sport, and it was an instant fan favorite. In Star Wars: The Clone Wars, we had a few glimpses of the sport, but we really haven't seen a complete pod race since Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. So in case you've been stranded on a desert island, or been feeding starving penguins in Antarctica, we'll quickly explain what pod racing is all about.
We do not negotiate. You're being sent in under the guise of discussing a diplomatic resolution. Once you arrive, do whatever is necessary to secure the city and ensure Governor Grotton's release.
Young Anakin Skywalker first showcased his racing talent in a pod racer cockpit in The Phantom Menace. Remember when he upset the favorite, Sebulba? Now those races saw a horde of pod racers compete to win the competition by completing a couple of laps around the track. Crowds gathered to watch the races. Because it was pretty much a free-for-all, anything could happen during these events. Rules were written in invisible ink, and the first one to cross the line won. No questions asked. It was par for the course to sabotage opponents, as was perfectly obvious in that fantastic first pod racing scene in Phantom Menace. And betting on the outcome of races was a part of the entertainment. When we were first introduced to pod racing, Anakin was still a slave under Watto. Thanks to Qui-Gon Jinn, Anakin obtained his freedom. Jinn betted against Anakin's master on Tatooine and won. We saw some sporadic pod racing in the Star Wars universe. Most of the time it happened on the screens in taverns. The sport was so popular it even spurred a video game.
Wait, little Skywalker has stalled.
So now that you're up to speed with pod racing, let's look at the events in Star Wars: The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 4. The main storyline was put aside and the focus shifted to Ciderin Scaleback. Tech, Wrecker, and Omega saved her from a tight spot. While Echo and Hunter were on a mission, Sid and Clone Force 99 spent time on Safatoma. This planet is all about pod racing, except they call it riot racing. So Sid took her Bad Batch clones and introduced them to Teo, both her new racer and a droid. Thing is, not everyone was happy that Sid appeared on Safatoma. Malegi, a Dawootan mobster, was particularly unhappy about her presence. We don't get much backstory from the episode, but it's clear the two of them have a history. Malegi and Sid make a side wager, Malegi's Jet Venom against Sid's Teo in a head-to-head pod race. A sneaky trap saw Jet Venom cross the finish line first. Teo ends up in pieces, literally. Then it turns out Sid has no credits to pay Malegi. He makes a deal with Omega for another race and takes Sid as collateral damage. Tech also takes part in the pod racing event and makes it through a twisted dark tunnel to win the race. And in the process, he nullifies all the tricks Jet Venom dishes up. When the members of Clone Force 99 come to take Sid home, Malegi gives them an ominous warning. Sid is probably not as loyal as they think, so it may have taken a while, but finally the Bad Batch seems to be getting well-earned justice in the Star Wars universe. The original storyline was 4 parts, and the Clone Force 99 genetically modified soldiers were roughly animated to appear in a future season of the Clone Wars. But when the show was cancelled by Cartoon Network, those plans were shelved. There was an online release of an unfinished test reel of the story arc, and the completed version finally saw the light in Season 7 on Disney+. The characters were popular enough to lead to a spin-off, which became the Bad Batch series. And we're now going into Season 2 with more intrigue, excitement, action, and Easter eggs. After the events and Revenge of the Sith, the titular clone squad is assigned to work under the Empire, but they quickly realize that the Empire is completely different from the Republic they fought for, and of course, they're not under the influence of the chips that control regular clones. Hunter, the warrior, Wrecker, the strongman, Tech, the computer genius, and cybernetic Echo escape Kamino, their home world. With them is Omega, a young ally played by Michelle Ang. She's a female clone with enigmatic origins, but Hunter, the sniper, soon reverts to his original Imperial mindset, and he sets out to hunt suspected rebels. He is now in the service of Stephen Stanton's Governor Tarkin. In Season 1's gripping finale, the cloning facility is destroyed. Season 2 starts with the squad departing on mercenary missions for Sid, the Trandoshan criminal played by Rhea Perlman.
We are not the enemy. The Empire seeks to establish peace and order throughout the galaxy.
Peace? There was a time I believed in that. So much so my colleague Mina Montarian
There are plenty of familiar faces in Season 2, and the new season also underlines precisely why the voice work of D. Bradley Baker is without compare. So let's touch on a couple of Easter eggs that you may have missed in the Bad Batch Season 2. Omega pulls up an image of a Lambda-class shuttle while doing a study of holograms of Imperial and Republic ships. The Lambda-class shuttle made its first appearance in Return of the Jedi. It was Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader's private transport when they boarded the second Death Star. The Bad Batch also has recolored their armor. It now has red stripes. This could be an early sign of where exactly their loyalties lie. Remember, red was the color of the Rebel Alliance. Armor was colored and decorated by the clones themselves to be a reflection of their personality, or that of the Jedi they served under in the Clone Wars. When Order 66 was executed, all the colors washed out, and white became the symbol of their loyalty to the Empire. There are also a whole bunch of Star Wars items in Sid's hideout. These include a Mandalorian mask and a Phase 2 clone helmet. The Bad Batch makes their way to the homeworld of Count Dooku, Sereno, in Ruins of War. Sereno was featured all the way through the Clone Wars. They managed to break into the Count's personal chambers before they're spotted and cornered. This is almost exactly the same thing Asajj Ventress did in the Clone Wars episode titled Night Sisters. At that point, she was on a mission to assassinate her master. There's another familiar Clone Wars ship that shows up in Ruins of War, but this is when the Bad Batch is chased by a low-altitude assault transport. This ship is also known as a Republic gunship, and it was first introduced during the Battle of Kamino and Attack of the Clones. From there, these ships were featured all the way through the Clone Wars, and they'd been completely converted to Imperial gunships by the time of Rebels.
That's the city? What happened to it?
Imperial orbital bombardment. Same as old Camino.
Cody, Obi-Wan Kenobi's loyal close commander, also makes his return. This is after he attempts to assassinate a former friend in Revenge of the Sith. When you look at the timeline of Legends, there is a reveal. In the Force Unleashed 2 background, Cody is given a Camino command post, and throughout the Imperial era, this is where he remains. The voices in the Bad Batch simply ups the level of excellence we've become accustomed to until now. Tawny Ames, the Separatist leader, is the voice of Taja Valenza. She was Shaki T in the Clone Wars and also Veniza Doza in Resistance. Governor Groton, who is sent to take control of Death Six, is voiced by Max Middleman. He's a Star Wars veteran whose voice will be familiar from video games like Battlefront and the Old Republic MMO RPG. Romar Adel, the Sereno native, is voiced by veteran actor and voice artist Hector Elizondo. You may remember him as Bernard Thompson in Pretty Woman or Mr. Grey in The Taking of Pelham 123, which dates all the way back to 1974.
Hey kid, keep it. And remember what I said. Get going. More will be on the way.
The Bad Batch producers have gone out of their way to make sure that the storylines, production, and voice talent are a level up from what fans have become used to. From the perspective of sheer production value, it promises to be a fantastic watch.